All right, thank you all very much. Now that Mark has all the bugs worked out, hopefully everything will work for me. I'm just going to set a timer here so I don't go over. Okay. See if I can be ambidextrous here. Mark invited me to talk to you, and it's a pleasure to be here. A little bit about what I do and what the company I work for does. ABF is a LTL company, less than truckload, and everybody familiar with the differences between LTL and full truckload? I see a lot of excited faces. All right. So, as I said, it's a pleasure to be here. I went to one of these, I went to a couple of them, one at RIT years ago and one at Michigan State even more years ago. A little bit about me. I have a bachelor's from Albion College, which is a small liberal arts school in Michigan. I got my master's at Michigan State. Worked for Eastman Kodak, Remington Arms, a couple other smaller companies. Now I'm with ABF Freight System. Been an IOPP member and an ISTA member for pretty much ever, and been on and off ASTM, D10, which is the packaging portion of ASTM. A little bit about ABF. It was started in 1923, so last year we celebrated our 90th anniversary. Founded in Fort Smith, Arkansas, which is, center of the state, right on the border, well, actually in the center north-south, but on the west edge of the state, near the Oklahoma border. And you have to excuse my voice, I'm suffering a little bit from a cold here. Okay, some other information about ABF. You may or may not have seen trucks on the highway. Most of the trucks you'll see are 28-foot vans or 28-foot trailers pulled by a tractor, and usually two of them. Western states you can pull three, actually. We have approximately, as you can see at the bottom there, 17,400 28-foot vans or pups, 1,300 road trailers, and 2,400 city trailers or city tractors. So a lot of equipment. We have more than 250 facilities, 10 DCs. You can see the closest one here is in Winston-Salem, but Carlisle, Pennsylvania, Dayton, Ohio. Dayton beat Ohio State last night, which is great. South Chicago, Kansas City, Salt Lake, Albuquerque, Dallas, Little Rock, and Atlanta. I work out of the Little Rock hub. Trucking industry, they talk a lot about claims ratio. Claims ratio is just how much you pay out in damages versus how much money you take in. And as you can see, somewhere on here, there's a laser pointer, right? Somebody doesn't like that. As you can see that since the late 90s, there's been a big effort at ABF to reduce the amount of damages we have, or the amount of claims that we pay out. And seeing that we're about a $2 billion company, even last year where you pay out 0.45% adds up to many millions of dollars that we actually pay out in claims. Another way to chart that is claim-free shipments. So you can see 99.43% of shipments are delivered claim-free. And a shipment could be one item or it could be 5 pallets. So it could be more than actually one item. So the shipper, the carrier, and the consignee, or the person getting the freight, we all have one common goal. We want a claim-free shipment. We don't want our product to arrive damaged. So I'm going to talk a little bit about less than truckload. We've got a short video, some common packaging issues, some unique freight that we handle, and then we'll do a little Q&A if you need. So, modes of transportation. We've got obviously air freight, over the road, ship, full truckload is what this is supposed to show. Small parcel, everybody's familiar with UPS, FedEx. less than truckload. And then, I'm sure everybody's seen that. And actually, you know, crazy packaging stuff, you go on the internet, you see all kinds of interesting things. Overseas, as some of you who've traveled or from overseas, you know that, you know, where the roads aren't that great, there's really unique ways of getting freight to the customer. So, what's the difference between LTL and truckload? I equate it to traveling by commercial airline versus having your own plane. So if I'm going from here to Aspen to go skiing, you know, I'm going to have, if I'm going on, like most people, I'm probably going to drive to Roanoke, fly to Atlanta, fly to Dallas, or fly to Denver, and then fly to Aspen. All right, so I got to change planes a couple times. Going to get handled if I'm a piece of freight. That means I have to change trucks and get handled by equipment several times, and more chance for damages. Also, you know, if you don't know who you're going to sit next to or what freight's going to be next to you on LTL, right? It can be anything, just like a commercial airline. You know, undoubtedly the screaming baby is always right behind you. The person who hasn't showered in about a month is, you know, right next to you. When you ship by full truckload from your facility to a warehouse or to a large store like a Walmart or a Costco, you know, you have control of your freight when it's packed and when it's unpacked, and it also doesn't change trucks, doesn't change planes in between. So what gets shipped LTL? Pretty much everything. So most small parcels limited to about 150 pounds. And if you're going to ship a couple boxes, you might ship it UPS, FedEx, small parcel. If I have, you know, 50 refrigerators, probably going to ship them truckload. If I have a pallet, one pallet of something, or maybe 2 or 3 pallets, I'm going to ship it LTL. All I'm paying for is the space in the truck that my product is utilizing. So, as Marshall said, everything moves on pallets, which is sort of true, because we do have some stuff that doesn't move on pallets. And believe me, it is a pain in the you-know-what when it's not on a pallet. But a lot of product that comes in from overseas, they don't want to pay for the pallet. They don't want to have the issues with the bugs and the heat treating of the pallets or chemical treating of the pallets to kill the pests. And of course, the pallet, the dimensions, it takes up valuable space in the container coming over from overseas. So we actually handle a fair amount of floor loader product, and it is not fun. A lot of it we end up putting on, we put it on pallets ourselves. So everything you can imagine, there's a sofa, mattresses. We get mattresses anywhere from fully encased and corrugated to just in a bag. Obviously some packaging is a little bit more appropriate for shipping LTL and other packaging. The National Motor Freight Classification, or MNFTA, publishes a list of required packaging for every item. Everybody's familiar with Rule 41 and Item 222, and Item 222 is corrugated for LTL shipments. So there are minimum requirements for packaging. Not all the shippers follow those minimum requirements, and that is a problem in the LTL environment. So some more example, pipes, granite countertops. There's a bathtub in a crate. This actually is a spiral staircase. It's about a $30,000 spiral staircase, and the shipper encases it in fiberglass. So they actually put a fiberglass shell around it, almost like a boat hull. It's a real pain to move, but fortunately they don't damage very easily. Rugs, just in plastic. Here's a commercial. It's either a washer or a dryer. Canoes, kayaks, ATV in a metal crate. This is just a snowmobile on a pallet. Personal watercraft. Tires, the front end of a truck, airplane propellers. I don't know how visible these are out there. It's a little bit faded out. Some industrial equipment. That's a miniature bulldozer. So I'm not quite sure if that's a toy for your child who needs a $20,000 bulldozer, or if it's sort of like just a miniature one getting into tight places, but it's actually, we do see some interesting things. And as you notice, some of this freight is it's really not packaged. It may be on a pallet, it may not even be on a pallet. It could just be loose. A lot of electronics. This is, some big televisions. These TVs actually come in from Mexico, not on a pallet. We actually palletize them. We charge the shipper like $3 to put it on a pallet. But it just makes it easier on our system, even though we lose money on the pallet. So anything you can imagine, we get, ABF does not handle any explosives or really hazardous materials. We do handle, batteries and some minor hazardous materials. But food, clothing, you can read raw materials, furniture, chemicals, building products, vehicle parts, machinery, RV equipment, household goods, anything you can imagine that would fit in a truck, we handle. And it all gets handled at the same time, which is what makes life interesting. So ABF and most LTL companies have different kinds of trucks. We have straight trucks, usually for city deliveries. LTL vehicles, these are the 28-foot pups. As you can see out west, they're allowed to pull 3. Don't ever drive next to one of those. We do use some 53-foot vans to pick up from large customers or deliver to large customers. And also we ship some stuff, some products trailer on a flat car. So if we're going from east to west, we will put our trailers on rail flat cars, take them to the west coast. As this demonstrates. Here's just some pictures inside. The newer vehicles have more points on the walls to secure the freight. Inside 53-footer. And where does our freight come from and deliver to? Well, it comes from docks. Companies have docks. Your standard docks are pretty standard. So we pick up and deliver to docks. We also pick up and deliver at yards. Some places they don't have yard or docks. They're going to just put the freight in from a ground forklift. Small businesses, which usually their docks are not regulation height, so to speak. And residential, we deliver to residences. So if somebody buys a gun safe or a swing set, we deliver those products, and usually we're going to deliver on a lift gate, especially if something like a gun safe, big gun safe, those things are heavy. So we also deliver to to residences, same with those televisions. And then we also deliver freight to freight terminals. Some people come and pick up their freight. They'll come to the terminal and pick it up themselves. So ABF and all the other LTL companies have small to large. Our smallest freight terminal is probably about 4 doors with a gravel parking lot and 2 people working at it. Our largest, Carlisle, Pennsylvania, more than 330 doors. So those are 28. Those little white nubbies are 28-foot trailers at the dock. So this thing, this place is just about 2,000 feet long. We get requests all the time, or labels on packaging all the time about, do not use forklifts, hand carry. Well, nobody's going to carry anything, a third of a mile down the dock. This is just another example of a route that a package might take from the West Coast to Florida. So you can see the blue line represents rail. It can be put on rail, go to Chicago, and then transfer. And the arrows will transfer. So actually this started from Portland, Oregon, went up to Seattle, either went rail to Chicago, Atlanta, and then Orlando, Florida. Or if it went by truck, it would have gone from Portland to Seattle, got consolidated, gone to Salt Lake City, then maybe to Dallas, Atlanta, and down to Orlando. So the freight gets handled many times, and that's the whole point. LTL, when you're designing packaging, it's different than truckload, it's different than small parcel. In previous places I worked, if we knew something was going to go small parcel, we packed it differently for certain customers than we did if we knew it was going to go to Walmart, for instance, direct to one of the big warehouses. Freight handling equipment, everything's handled with a forklift. You have to expect, if you say this needs to be hand carried, it's probably not going to happen. No matter what, they're going to carry it with a forklift. The forklift drivers are very ingenious on how to move stuff with forklifts, as you can see from some of these photos. Our standard forklift starts out with 42-inch blades. They're supposed to replace them once they get below about 38 inches. They actually wear out from rubbing on the concrete. And we do have extensions, forklift extensions, either 72 or 96 inches long. An important thing, we'll get into pallets a little bit, but pallets, of course, are very important with your handling product with forklifts. We do have a lot of different attachments, like a sign mover or glass mover. We have movers for long freight, furniture bin. So we do design attachments to pick up unique freight, just based on our customer freight profile for certain areas. Pallet jacks, delivering at home when I'm delivering a gun safe or something that's going to be probably on a pallet jack eventually. Pallet jacks have their own unique requirements. So if you have a pallet that doesn't have a big opening at the bottom, you know, pallet jacks tend to be thicker than forklift blades, so that's problematic also if your pallet's not designed properly to accommodate a pallet jack. And then also, even though I said we have everything with forklifts, this is an example of a part of a swing set being delivered, actually at my sister's house. But other unique freight, when it gets to the hand, they will move it by hand when it gets to some residential site. Another thing about LTL, keep dry, keep warm, keep cold. It's going to keep whatever it's going to be outside. If it's snow, cold and snowy outside, there's probably going to be cold and snow on your freight. So you have to take that into account. And when it's, if you're in Dallas in the summertime, it's going to be 140 degrees. And inside trailers, as you probably know, they can get up over 140 degrees in the west in the summertime, or in the southwest. Also, 24-hour operation. What is easy to see during the day may not be easy to see at nighttime with a dinky forklift headlight. You don't see a whole lot, special labeling, it's hard to see. So you have to take that into consideration when you're designing your packaging also. How do we secure the freight? Well, the freight inside the trailer, we secure it with other freight. Right? Just jam it in, not jam it in, that doesn't sound good. But in reality. Also dunnage, things like pallets, corrugated, airbags, just anything to keep the freight from moving. Ropes or straps. Especially if you have a tall product, you've got to expect it's going to be strapped, or sometimes they don't have straps, they'll just tie it with rope. And you have to make sure that there's places where the freight can be secured to the side of the truck. Other things ABF has, these are called decking tables. It's essentially just about a 52-inch tall steel table, so to speak, and it helps prevent stacking freight on top of other freight. It's one of our biggest causes of damage. So you can slide freight underneath, put freight on top, and then you're not, you don't have the dynamic compression issues. And there's also decking beams that are similar. You can either use them for shoring, holding freight from moving forward and backwards, or to stack on. And they're nice because they're adjustable. The newer trailers have tracks inside, and so they're adjustable about every 6 inches in height and about every 2 inches forward and backwards, or 2 feet forward and backwards. Dividers, so that's just a plywood wall that you can put up, separate your freight. And we also do for customers who request it, freight that won't be transferred. So if you want to ship a shipment like a full truckload, that wall won't be taken down until it gets to the customer's facility. Way to prevent your freight from being transferred. So dynamic forces, everybody knows about how the roads are in the United States, right? But there's other conditions that happen. So acceleration, braking, turning, and this is from a government study. So all the acceleration that happens during over-the-road transport, and that you can and it's approximately tilt angle. So if you can think about 0.17 G's is about a 10-degree angle. So I don't know if you've ridden in the subways, but everybody's leaning against everybody else. Same within the back of the trailer. Freight leans on freight, pushes on the dunnage. Vertical forces, which is what we think about most, and you hit a pothole or a speed bump, exceeding 5 Gs, a transitory event, is very common in the environment. And what that equates to is the 1,000-pound pallet that's on top of me, can momentarily weigh 5,000 pounds. So that all has to be taken into account when we design packaging. This slide is actually from a person who works for me. He liked his, E equals MC squared. So expect movement, contact, and compression. So everything's pushing on everything else as the trailer goes down the road. We'll see if this video is going to play. That would be a no.
Watch what happens when they're...
All right, I guess it's going to play or not. They're both on the desktop. Is it up on your screen? Okay.
There is a void between freight.
Yeah, exactly. When you're a ding, you're supposed to advance the film strip, right? Now we're remaining. All right, gate 4. Because it should just come up to that picture of the truck and then. So hit play down there.
When the freight is not properly stair-stepped to the rear of the trailer. Now watch the same freight when properly secured with airbags. Notice that even without bracing behind the freight, the airbag applies enough side pressure to prevent the freight from shifting toward the rear of the trailer. Generally, if freight can't move, it won't get damaged. Cubing is essential to optimize a trailer's space utilization. Cubing also plays an important role in securing freight and ensuring it is roadworthy. ABF freight handlers are well trained at cubing freight inside trailers by stacking shipments for optimum transportation. Motivated to save money and help the environment, many manufacturers are trying to use less packaging. That sounds like a good idea. However, shipments without essential packaging have an increased risk of damage, resulting not only in higher cost and environmental sustainability issues, but also customer dissatisfaction. For example, a shipment that uses only stretch wrap packaging without an outer container is more susceptible to damage. There seems to be a misconception that if a carrier can see the product, they will take better care in handling their goods. The reality is that most damage does not occur while transferring from one trailer to another, but during the actual over-the-road transportation due to dynamic compression, vibration, stacking, or shifting of other freight. The stretch wrap itself provides little or no protection from other freight or handling equipment. Fiberboard provides a protective barrier from other freight and freight handling equipment, whereas stretch wrap alone provides virtually no protection. In this demonstration, a fiberboard container with the proper internal packaging could have prevented damage. Stretch wrap does, however, play a very important role in the distribution process. Used properly, it will keep a shipment secure and allow for timely, damage-free delivery. Unfortunately, studies have shown that stretch wrap is rarely used properly, sometimes creating more problems than it solves. Take a look at this demonstration of two similar pallets of product, with the only difference between the two is the stack pattern and the way the pallets were stretch wrapped. See the importance of proper stretch wrapping techniques and the result when stretch wrap is not applied correctly?
This actually isn't part of the original video, but this was just a demonstration showing IBC going over railroad tracks. And I've had showing an IBC going over railroad tracks, and I've had many people say, well, you know, it's heavy, it's not going to move around on the truck, it weighs 3,000 pounds. It doesn't matter what it weighs. When the bed of the truck exceeds 1 G, that thing is going to jump up in the air. So, you know, when people say, oh, it doesn't need to be secure, it's not going to move around, it's absolutely not true. All right. Okay, so what do we see in the LTL world? Well, I know everybody in Virginia Tech is interested in pallets, and we see lots and lots and lots of bad pallets. What do we like? Well, we like bottom deck boards just for this particular reason. If you stack freight with no bottom deck boards, it has a tendency to tip versus having bottom deck boards, whether it's a block or stringer. And also, open bottom pallets aren't as strong. Obviously, you don't have, they're more susceptible to failure. LTL environment, not a big fan of wing pallets, just because the wing is when you can see the top deck board sticks out past the edge of the side stringer. And they just tend to catch on other freight when we slide product in and out of trailers. Nails. As you can see, this pallet started out straight at one time, or started out square. As Marshall was talking about, the fasteners are very important. The kind of fastener you use, the placement of them. National Wood Pallet Container Association does have a pallet standard, and that's actually some of their standards are free. They have a pallet standard and crate standards that you can actually access without being a member. Some other fastener placement. If you nail into the end grain, you get about half the strength as if you nail into the side of the wood. We see a lot of this. A lot of fastener failures. Pallets made out of other materials. You wouldn't believe what we see pallets made out of. I mean, not just your standard plastic and metal, but just cobbled together. I have no idea what that is. And here, this is obviously, great design here. But people ship freight on this, and then they're upset. They say, look, your freight got damaged because and we can deny claims based on packaging not meeting requirements. So a pallet like that, it doesn't meet requirements. But to most people, it's just a pallet. Why do I want to spend money on it? It's not worth time to spend more than a couple bucks on it. And as you know, that's not true. Pallet test, there's a couple of different ways to test pallets. ISO, ASTM, and ISTA 3B, International Safe Transit Association 3B, this is a relatively new test. And it does the real life what you do with a pallet. When you spin a pallet around, you're not going to drive from one side to the other side to pick it up. You're just going to push on it with your fork tines and pick it up. This was a test that Xerox used. It's a public test, actually. Pallet loads. We see a lot of overhanging freight. Either the product isn't secured to the pallet properly and it moves, or else the product is just bigger than the pallet. And overhanging freight causes all kinds of problems and is much more susceptible to damage, as well as to just damage from other freight, and then also the product's not being properly supported. As you can see, box overhang. The most of your strength in a corrugated container, of course, is in the corners. If your corners aren't supported, then in all likelihood, your corrugated case can fail. Also, overhang. When they put product into the trailer, they have a tendency to move to bump into other freight. If the pallets contact, that's a lot better than if the freight contacts. Obviously, avoid overhang, limit underhang, and then stacking pattern. As you know, column stack is much stronger compression-wise. Tends to be a little bit more unstable as far as falling over. So you can do interlocking, which you lose a little bit of compression strength. We have customers, and we do recommend some customers sort of a hybrid, where they'll column stack on the bottom and then interlock on top, which sort of gives you the best of both worlds. That was a box, not some kind of product on there. Another good point, test the way it's going to be shipped. So these are some a store pack, like a Costco pack. And sure, maybe in the lab, everything was perfectly aligned and it worked. But in real life, things get out of alignment. So the corners aren't perfectly aligned, and the product fails, the packaging fails. Securing loads, stretch wrap, as mentioned in the video, there's the good, bad, and the ugly. We see a lot of freight. It may have like 2 turns of stretch wrap on it, not stretch wrap to the pallet, slides off the pallet, or just tumbles over. Also, a lot of people who include the pallet, and you have to stretch wrap. It's amazing to see the people just walk around and stretch wrap just hanging loose. Or equipment that's out of calibration, because it's just stretch wrap. Nobody wants to, people don't want to pay to calibrate their equipment. A couple different ways to test stretch wrap. Obviously, there's the cut and weigh and things such as that, the pre-stretch. We also make equipment. You can tip your pallet to see if it's going to hold, or you can do the old-fashioned, non-OSHA approved. Strapping. See a lot of plastic strap. A lot of people are getting away from metal strap just because they think it's. Some people can't cut it off. It's also hazardous. People get cut by it. It's hazardous in that way. But you need to strap in both directions. Strap in just one direction, and this long phrase you can see is sliding off the pallet. Also, you want to avoid running strap where forklift blades are going to hit. As you can see here, if you run the strap through the notches, it's going to be in perfect alignment to get speared by the forklift blades and get cut, especially if it's plastic strapping. Bolts, it's amazing. We see a lot of product bolted to pallet, especially like server racks or large equipment, and if they don't use lock washers or some kind of thread lock, the bolts will just back out during transportation because of the vibration. Crates. We see lots of crates, everything from good to bad to ugly. People are just downgrading the kind of wood that they use to make crates now. Just very poor quality wood. It's required that crates have 3-way locking corners. So if you notice here, you're always nailing into the side grain. You're not going to be nailing into the end grain. Staples are allowed, but staples generally just do not hold crates together well. Diagonals, if you put diagonal in the crate, there's a great, it's a huge document though, but it's public. It was done by the Wood Products Association back in the 50s from Wisconsin. And they did all kinds of studies on crates for the military. And putting diagonals in increases the strength, by like 50%. So a crate like this with a couple diagonals is going to be much stronger than a crate without diagonals. And also you don't want to have too big openings in your crate. we recommend no more than like 16 inches diameter. Otherwise, adjacent product can get in and damage your product. Labels. We try to follow labels, especially this one. Some people don't label at all. Other people, it looks like a VW bus from the 70s. It's just covered with labels. And as at nighttime, you may not see everything. We also, this is just an interesting thing. This was actually received from the shippers. So, up arrows that aren't going up. We have arrows going opposite directions. If you do have specific freight handling requirements, just label and be as specific as possible. Product descriptions, they also help. It's a television, all right? That's an outboard motor, so one end, the one end is going to be much heavier than the other end. And this is a great statement. Handling labels are a lot less effective than well-designed packaging because you have people who don't English may be a second or third or non-existent language for them, can't read or write. They're handling your freight, it could be dark, label could fall off. As this says, your labels have to be seen, read, understood, and then acted upon. Long freight, anything longer than about 96 inches has to go in endwise. We get long freight that's not four-way accessible with forklifts. It makes life very difficult. Poorly designed long pallets that bend. Or this is actually a load that's on 5 pallets. And the only thing that holds it together is usually like stretch wrap or strapping. When you lift up long pallets, you put a lot of stress at the fork tip blades and then also at the bottom deck board towards the forklift. So those need to be either screwed in, strapped down, or very secure. Long freight gets slid a lot. You can slide a third of the mile down the dock. So having chamfers or a ski on the front is very helpful because the product, will get, if it's long or if it's not long, it's going to get slid around on the dock. Short freight is unique. A lot of people are used to 40 by 48 pallets, and it's a nice sign. Top-heavy freight. Anything that's top-heavy, of course, needs to be labeled, and it needs to be able to be secured to the trailer wall. There are requirements for when it has to be labeled, either via test or via a height-to-width ratio. Another reason for bottom deck boards. Forklift goes around a corner or turns. Something with bottom deck boards is going to be less likely to tip over than if it doesn't have bottom deck boards. Stretch wrap, as I mentioned in the video, we do see some stretch wrap, a lot of stretch wrap product, and a lot of it is just, it's not well done. There's too big of apertures, so the freight is much more likely to get damaged. So some resources, ISTA, which I know people are mentioning in associations. Actually, ISTA, I don't know if Virginia Tech is a member or not. If your school is a member, you can belong as a student for $10 a year, which is a bargain. If your school's not a member, it's $30 a year. For an individual, once you get out in the real world, it's like $150. So I would say join everything you can. It's good fodder for your resume. PalletCentral.com is the National Wood Pallet Container Association. Again, obviously ASTM, ISO. If you're shipping for LTL, designed for forklift handling. Stay within the pallet perimeter. Expect contact from other freight. Expect dynamic motion over the road, and also, don't ship product without pre-testing it. There's a lot, you know, ISO, ASTM, and ISTA, they all have pre-shipment tests. And so test your product before you ship it. Another thing I run into is people, you know, well, we'll do an over-the-road test. And really an over-the-road test tells you nothing. It tells you if your product fails, right? If it comes back damaged, it's broken. If it comes back undamaged, what does that tell you? Is it overpacked? Is it packed all right? Is it underpacked and it just happened to be 1 in 100 shipments that, you know, that didn't get damaged? So really, just shipping something out blind tells you absolutely nothing. All right, any questions? Yes, sir.
Does ABF have any standards for, like there's Rule 41 and then UPS and FedEx each have their own kind of standards where if you're shipping with them, they have to meet a criteria or they can deny it, just like to save themselves from any damage. Does ABF have any, I guess, guidelines?
We do have guidelines. Actually, that's one thing that needs to be updated because it's probably 15 years old. UPS and FedEx do have great guidelines. As far as the NMFC, or National Motor Freight Classification, is somewhat of the guideline. That lists the minimum packaging requirements for any item. So that's the, I don't know, Michigan State probably has a copy. But the book is, you know, like 600 and some pages, and has hundreds of standards or hundreds of requirements. Some are pretty nebulous, like in packaging, whatever that means, which actually is a definition. And some are very specific. So that is the requirement of the shipper, is to make sure that they at least meet the minimum requirements in the NMFC. Other questions? Yes, sir. We do not. We, for tracking, excuse me, everybody who works on a forklift or on the dock, they have a handheld, they call it a PDA. But it's essentially a handheld computer, and they log the freight on and off the trailer. So if they're taking freight off the trailer, it's going to have a particular number on it, and a barcode. So they're going to log it off that trailer. It'll know that I handled it. It'll know what time I handled it, where I handled it, and what I did with the freight. So whether I put it on the dock or whether I put it into directly into another trailer, every time the freight is touched, it is logged in the computer. But no, we do not use RFD. You know, I was more involved in it when I was doing consumer products, and I think Walmart has sort of backed off a little bit on what, you know, on their requirements. It's more expensive than a lot of people thought it was going to be. So I don't have a really strong opinion on it. Anything else? All right, there's the buzzer. I guess we're done. All right, I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all, and have fun and be safe.